Hey, if you're joining us online, I'm Dimitri, lead pastor here at Bridge Church, and I'm just so glad all you guys have decided to come and worship with us. So, hey, let's give it up for yourself this morning for taking the time to come out. And if you've been here, we started this new series talking about who is God. We came out of a series called Doubting God, and now we're into one that's titled Who is God? Because sometimes our view of God can be skewed by things we've been through or by people that we put our trust in. And this morning, I want to talk about who is God in the sense of trust and faithfulness. And let me ask you this question, like what keeps you at night? Keeps you up at night, right? Like even now, where you're sitting, what's your biggest worry? What's the biggest thing that you're worried about? Maybe it's the news, right? Maybe it's war and unrest, or maybe it's economic uncertainty, or maybe you have some aging parents. Or maybe it's your next doctor's appointment. You don't know what the doctor going to say, right? Maybe it's like, man, I just want to keep my children safe when they go to school. Maybe it's your finances. Maybe it's like, man, I just want to provide for my family. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do it in the way that I want to. And you're worried about these things, worried how you're going to pay your next bill, college debt, finding or losing a job. Maybe it's failure in a certain area of life. I don't know what it is for you, right? Or maybe you're like, I don't got no worry. And now you're worrying because you don't got no worry, right? But worry, it has a way of finding us. And I know for me, one of the things I worry about sometimes is like, will I ever be able to accomplish it all? Or am I able to get it all done? And sometimes I find myself worrying about it. And then I have to check myself and get back in the line and be like, no, God, I trust you. Like if you said it, it's on you. I'll be obedient. I'll walk it out, but you got to work it out, right? But sometimes worry pulls us from that. And one of the things I found out over life and just living and doing ministry and living life with people is that I think what we worry about most, right, like reveals like where we trust God the least. It's like the very things where we're so just like anxiety and anxious. That's a spot in our lives where we may trust God the least. Where we're like, God, I don't know if you can handle this one. I'm going to take it back. I'm going to try to handle it. Or, God, I don't know if you're going to get it done. But I think those are the moments that we do need to just give it back to God. Like God, I don't know what else to do. So I'm going to just cruise. I'm going to walk. I'm going to work, but it's on you. And if it don't happen, it's on you. Instead of worrying. I love what Jesus said when he was talking to his disciples in Matthew 6, verses 25 and then 27. It says this, therefore I tell you. What did he tell them? Do not what? Worry. Do not worry about your life. And then verse 27, can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? Like think about that. Like by worrying about something that hasn't happened, that may happen, what value does that add? And I'm talking about worry in the sense where it's affecting your body. It's affecting the chemistry of your body, affecting your mind, affecting your health. And you're so worried about it. It does nothing. I love what this lady, Corrie ten Boom, said. She was a child. As a child, she spent time in a concentration camp. And I love her quote. Her quote is this: worry doesn't empty tomorrow of its sorrow. It empties today of its strength. I'll say that again. Worry doesn't empty tomorrow of its sorrow. It empties today of its strength. You know, it's kind of like what Jesus talked about. Hey, in that prayer, he's like, pray that, God, you would give us what? Our daily bread. Like, give us what we need right now. That's why he talks about how his be a lamp to our footsteps, right? A light to our path. Because it's one step at a time. We got to trust him. We can't see the future. We don't know the future. We don't know what's going to happen, but we got to trust God. And we see this kind of stuff. It's like we let worry just rob us. And today I want to kind of help get us back in line and really recognize those points. And maybe build our faith to be like, you know what, God is trustworthy. And he is faithful. And so the title of the message today is Living Without Worry. Living without worry. And I think one of the most foundational questions of all humanity can be found like in Genesis chapter 3, verse 1. I'm going to read it. It says this is Adam and Eve. He says, now the serpent was more cunning than any animal of the field, which the Lord had made. And he said to the woman, has God really said you should not eat from any tree of the garden? This is Satan talking to Eve. Hey, did God really say this? What is he doing right now? He's building mistrust. He's asking her, like, can you really trust what God says? Like one of the first things that enemy tries to do, one of the first things he did that's recorded in Scripture is try to get you not to trust God. Try to get Eve. Don't trust God. I don't know if you sure you can trust his word? I mean, did he really say that? Is that what he meant? Like one of the first things he did, is God trustworthy? And Eve had to make a decision, like, am I going to trust this apple? Right? Am I going to get this apple and go to work on it? Or am I going to trust what God said and said, don't eat from that tree? Let's keep reading. In Genesis 6, it says this, when the woman saw that the tree was good for food and that it was a delight to her eyes, to the eyes, it's almost like, she's like, God must not know how this is going to make me feel. She's like surely, like God, he must not know what this is going to do for me. He's saying don't eat it, but I don't trust that he know what he's talking about. That moment. I keep going. And that the tree was desirable to make one wise. She took some of its fruit and ate it. And she also gave some to her husband. With her and he, and they ate it. Listen. The first thing that made it all just get jacked up was sowing a seed of distrust. Was sowing a seed of that God is not faithful. That God is not trustworthy. You can't trust his word. You can't trust the Bible because it's not true. It's the first seed that he sowed into humanity, trying to get us not to trust God. And I know, like all of us, we make decisions. We got to make decisions. I remember a couple months ago, I showed you the study where it says the average human being, we make 35,000 decisions a day. 35,000 decisions a day. And sometimes we want to get into a point where it's just like we think from our own human wisdom, we're going to rock it and knock it out the park. And we take God out of the equation. But we got to decide, am I going to trust God or am I going to trust what I can see? Am I going to trust God or am I going to trust like what I desire, right? My desire, what feels good to me. Am I going to trust God or am I going to trust what I can touch? Am I going to trust what I can see the result may be? Or am I going to trust God or am I going to trust what I feel like I can control? And that's tough. That's tough because we all want control. We all want to control every aspect of our lives. And when that's challenged, it kind of knocks us out of alignment. But I love what the psalmist said in Psalm 62, verse 7 and 8. He says, "It's my salvation and my honor depend on who? God. He is my mighty rock, my refuge." And I love this line. This is where it is. Trust in him when? At all times, you people, pour out your hearts to him. For God is our refuge. Trust in him at all times. At all times. You know, I was, it's funny. I was just talking to this dude this morning, one of our tech guys. And he was like, "Man, I lost 30 pounds. And I was like, "Dang, I'm kind of jealous right now. I'm trying to lose." Look, I got on the scale this week, and I had gained weight. And I was like, "How that's happening? I've been in here." But then I started thinking about it. And it's like, I know I shouldn't be doing some things, but I'm like, I got this. I'm not using godly wisdom in some areas of my life. I'm like, God, you got to help me. But it's like, even when I want that pack of Skittles and that little Debbie snack from the Dollar General on Dundee, Central Road, I know exactly where it is. Look, in my brain, I just physically saw where the Nutty Buddies and the oatmeal pies were. Oh, shoot, I need some help. Lord, help me. But it's oh, shoot. it's like one of these areas of my life where I know exactly what I need to do, but I'm still doing the wrong thing because I'm trusting in my own wisdom when I know my wisdom in that area is not the best for me. Skittles is not going to do it. Little Debbie and all her glory is not going to do it. But I still use it. I still do it. And I'm working on that. I'm just going to give all my cards to you. My money, my cash, my wallet. Tish like, yeah, Bed Bath & Beyond. No, I'm kidding. That's funny. I don't care what you say. But it's like we got to trust God in every aspect of our lives. And he'll give us wisdom. He'll lead us, but we have to make a decision. Are we going to trust him, or are we going to trust what we think is right, what we control? Or are we going to trust his word and do what he's asked us and told us to do? So, is God trustworthy? Let's answer that question today. So one of the ways I know God is trustworthy, and I want to encourage you that God is trustworthy, is that, number one, God has always been faithful. He's been faithful before. He's been faithful before. Well, and we see this theme throughout the Old Testament. We see this theme of where the writer is telling the people of Israel, hey, remember. Like remember what God has done. Remember how he moved for you. And we see this through Genesis, through Exodus, through Leviticus, through Deuteronomy, through Joshua, through all of it. We see this theme of, hey, look, when you come to a point where you don't know if you can trust God, remember, he's been faithful before. You know, I want to read this in Exodus 13. It says this, and Moses said to the people, what? Remember this day in which you departed from Egypt, from the house of slavery, by a powerful hand, the Lord brought you out from this place. What is he telling them? Because now they're in a place where they got to trust God again. Like now they're out in the wilderness, and they got to trust God for everything. And it's like Moses saying, listen, the Lord heard their cries. He heard your cries. Like did not God deliver you out of the bunch of Egypt when you were in bondage? Did not he deliver you from Pharaoh? Did not he keep you safe from the 10 plagues? Right? Like, did he not, when you got to the edge of the Red Sea, and you have one of the most powerful armies on the face of earth at that time chasing you, did he not open the Red Sea, allow you to walk across on dry ground, and stop that army in its tracks? Did he not, like he said, hey, listen, remember, did he not guide you when you got to the desert? Did he not guide you by a cloud during the day and fire by night? When you were thirsty, did he not give you water from a rock? When you were hungry, did he not send manna from heaven? And I think some of us need to go back and stop and pause when we get in moments where it's like, God, I don't know if I can trust you in this. We need to stop and remember what God has done for us. We need to stop and remember some Red Seas that he's parted open for us. We need to stop and remember that he's kept us safe from some plagues that could have took us out. We need to stop and think about these things. Remember these things because he's been faithful before. And I love this, like even in the Old Testament, they would build these rocks. They would take stones. And they would put these stones, they would pile them up on top of each other. And they would use these stones, a pile of rocks, as something significant. Like to mark a time where God did something. That they would put stones up like this to say, hey, you know what? I remember when God did this. And they set it up as a memorial. It's kind of like what they did when Israel crossed over the Jordan River. And they did this for many acts that God did for them. And I think sometimes we need to do the same thing. We need to kind of go build some piles, some monuments, find them in our memory, find them when God has done something for us. When he's come through in a time where it's like, God, I don't know how we're going to make it out of this, but you know what? I do remember when you did it. And if you did it before, you can do it again. Because why? God is faithful. He's been faithful before. He's been so faithful. If he's done it before, he can do it again. You know, I remember a long time ago, Tish and I, we moved to Virginia. And any of you guys remember that economic crash that happened in the early 2000s? Like everything just like housing market. It was crazy. And I remember I remember us like we had just moved to Virginia, and we were planting a church called Destination Church. Trinity's daddy. We all got together to plant that church, and mind you, this is right when everything crashed. I went to school for business management and marketing. Got a double major in business management and marketing, and I figured, oh man, I can get a job while we plant this church. I'll just get a job in marketing, and everything will be good. And mind you, we get over there, economy crashes. I can't find a job nowhere. And it came down to the point where we had to move in with our friends. They had two children at the time. Tish was pregnant with our second child, Kyla. Maya was like 1 or 2. She was a little itty-bitty. And we had to move in with them, and they had a 3-bedroom house. We had all our stuff in one room downstairs, and we're like, God, like we know you told us to come here and help plant this church. I was the worship pastor, creative director for that church. And I'm like, God, you called us here, and we're moving here, and we don't know what is going on. The economy crashed. I can't find a job. No marketing jobs are available. I ended up accepting a job as a janitor in a preschool, taking out poo-poo diapers every day and picking up school-age kids when they got out of school. Now, mind you, I'm in the city nearby where before we was living good. We was living a life. We lived in the gated community. We drove the Lexus. We was living a life. And now I'm back, and I got a car that my sunroof is on the opposite side, right? When I look down, I can see the road. And Tish had a car. What'd you call that green car? It was, who? Emerald. That's a weird name. And I had a little gray car. I called it Gray Thunder. It was a gray Mercury Tracer. And we're living this life. I'm like, God, we're planting a church. I can't find a job. I'm working as a janitor, taking out poo-poo diapers at a doggone preschool, and we're supposed to be planting a church. I'm embarrassed. We're on food stamps. We're on WIC. And I'm like, how am I going to tell somebody God is good when I'm living like this? Like God, how am I supposed to do this? Can't find a job. Now we're going deeper in debt. And then I remember we was faithful, though. It was like, God, we're going to do it. And God began to show us faithfulness because we couldn't afford an apartment. But then the pastor in that area was like, hey, man, we love you guys. What do you need? I was like, well, we don't have a place to stay. Right now we're staying with our friends. He's like, don't worry about it. We're going to get you an apartment. They got us a place to stay. They paid the rent for it. I'm like, all right, God, you're so faithful. But then it goes on, our cars. We're driving back and forth. Then both our cars, first Tish's car blew up in the parking lot. Literally. The engine caught on fire. Blew up. I'm like, God, what is happening? Can we get a break? And then my gray Mercury Tracer blew up. People that barely knew us. It's like we're supposed to plant a church. Our cars are blowing up. Ain't no city bus. I'm like, God, what is going on? But the goodness and the faithfulness of God. We had people giving us cars to get us back and forth. We had a lady brought us their minivan. Then we had a friend let us use their Ford Explorer, one of them nice ones too, back in the day. And it's like we didn't have the money to do this, but it's kind of like God saying, you know what, just trust me, because you're going to need this faith later on in life. I need you to see that I'm faithful. And then you fast forward about 15 years to now, right? You fast forward, we move here. Same predicament. Like, God, I still can't get a job now. Nobody's hiring because this COVID thing is happening. I'm like, what is going on? We're planting a church. But do you know, I begin to remember what? You know what? God was faithful then, and he could be faithful now. And what happened? God was faithful then, and he was faithful now. When we found ourselves in the predicament of how we're going to move forward, how we're going to provide for our family, how we're going to plant a church, how are we going to afford to move from Hawaii to Winter Haven, Florida? How? How are we going to get our cars here? Do you know we had a friend, and we're still good friends to this day. We had a friend, I didn't know they was wealthy. We just love them. We like hanging out with them. And they like, if you knew them, you wouldn't think it either. But do you know we told them we were moving, and they gave us all the money we needed to ship everything. They didn't know what we needed. They was just like, hey, you know what? You guys are moving. You planted a church. I was like, yes. Hey, we want to give you this to help you move. And what they gave us covered the whole move of us moving all of our stuff to here. Listen, God is faithful. And he uses moments like that. And I guarantee you there's going to be some more moments in our life where it's like we're stepping up because we're believing, like even for our church, we're believing, will we be in a risk? No. We have dreams. We have visions. We want our own facility where our facility will be not just a church. It'll be a church on Sundays. But during the week, we have a community center where it's a STEM center in there, where we're helping students, where we're helping parents, where it functions just like a community center. And we're going to do that. Do we have the money to do that? No, but I know God has been faithful before, and he'll be faithful now. So just know that God is faithful. Number 2, if he was faithful before, he'll be faithful today. He'll be faithful today. He'll be faithful right where you are right now. Listen, God led the children of Israel right to the edge of the promised land. He led them right to the edge of the promised land. And Joshua said this in Numbers 14. It says this, Only do what? Only do not rebel against the Lord. Do not be afraid of the people in the land, because we will devour them. Their protection is gone, but what? The Lord is with us. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Listen, Joshua understood in this moment that it's not dependent on him. It's not dependent on their success. It's not dependent on their skills. It's dependent on God. He's telling people, listen, whatever you do, we're up to this moment, do not rebel against God. Like, trust God. He's brought us this far. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Just trust him. And he understood that. Look, even Jesus said this in Matthew 1, where it talks about, like, God with us, that Jesus is what? He's Emmanuel, which is God with us. And then we go on to Matthew 28, verse 20. It says this, Jesus was telling his disciples, behold, I am what? With you, even until the end of age. I'll never leave or forsake you. Like, he'll never leave us. He'll never forsake us. Jesus is with us. And if he's with us, what do we fear? If he's with us, if God is with us, who can be against us? Who can stand against us? Who can stop God's plan? Who can stop it? Your fear, maybe. Your disobedience. Trust God and stay faithful. If you mess up, repent real quick. Get back up. Get back up and turn to him. Trust him. And here's the thing. Sometimes we get into tough situations. And we're like, God, I don't know how this is going to work out. I don't know what to do no more. Maybe your wife or your child or your husband or your cousin, your grandma, maybe they're super sick and you're like, God, I don't know what to do. Or maybe you're in a tough situation where you don't know how you're going to get out of it. You don't know how you're going to get out of debt. You don't know how you're going to solve a particular problem or something that's going on in your family. Or maybe your kids are just going psycho. And you don't have the answer. Your relationships, you don't have the answer. And maybe it's just been a tough season that just sucks. I mean, it sucks the life out of you. And you're like, God, something got to give. But here's the thing that I've learned, and you see it throughout Scripture. God doesn't always pull us out. But he will step in it with you. He did it with Shadrach, Meshach, and a bad Negro, right? Now, I'm joking. That's funny. Look at my wife like, you better stop that now. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Some of y'all like, wait, did he just say that? Like, but sometimes God don't pull us out of the fire, but he gets in the fire with us. Not only for our benefit, but those that are around us, to see that he's faithful and that he is God. when Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego got thrown into the fire furnace, what did the king say? He said, hey, look, I thought we threw 3 of them in there, but I see 4, and one looks like the Son of God. And they're in there dancing and singing. So you got to imagine, it's the same with us. When we get in tough situations, sometimes we may just need to stop and dance. When we get in the lion's den, well, we need to just stop and pray and thank God. And he comes in there with us. And he sets the tone. He doesn't always pull us out, but he'll always be right there with us. He'll always be right there with us telling, hey, keep trusting. Keep moving forward. I'm right here with you. Encouraging us to move on and trust him. God is trustworthy today. Not just because of the absence of problems, but because his presence is with us. His presence is always with us. It's just like this. You know, some of you guys maybe got kids. If you don't got kids, you got nieces and nephews or whatever. And it's just like when kids they kind of get like scared at night, right? And you tell them, go to bed. 5 minutes later, they come in there, hey, I can't sleep. And it's like, okay, well, just go count to 10 or something. Close your eyes, go to bed. Then they come back, like, I think it's something knocking on my window. I'm like, you're on the 2nd floor, ain't nothing knocking on your window. Take your butt to bed. They go, then they come back. Something in my room. What you mean, something in your room? I don't know. It's just something in there. And you know, your child just may be afraid. They're scared. There's something in their room, or maybe the wind is knocking, and in their mind, they think it's something trying to get them. And then what does the parent do? They go in there with them. The kid lays down. You get in the bed beside them. Well, Tish do this part, because I'm like, hey, man, you better take your butt to bed. Suck it up. Turn the light on. No. But you go in there. You lay down with them. You get in the bed. And then the kid kind of, they scoot against you to set a booby trap, just in case they feel you move. They know, hey, where you going? Right? Like, dog, I thought you was asleep, right? But you go in there and you lay down with them. But here's the thing. Nothing has changed in their circumstances. There's still a knocking. There's still something there. Nothing has changed, but everything has changed. Why? Because you're there. Because you came in the room with them. Because they've known my mom or my dad or my cousin or my aunt or my uncle or my grandma or my granddaddy or somebody. They're trustworthy and they're faithful. And because they're here, I know nothing's going to mess with me. Everything. Nothing has changed, but everything has changed. Why? Because he stepped in. And you get that confidence like, whew. Boy, I could walk through hell with a jumpsuit with gasoline on it and not catch on fire. Huh? When we recognize he's with us, it gives us that strength. It gives it to us. So listen, we know God is faithful before. We know he's faithful today because he's with us, and we know he'll be faithful tomorrow. We know he'll be faithful tomorrow. God led the children right up to the promised land. But here's the thing, they didn't go in. And the reason they didn't go in because they didn't trust God's faithfulness. They lost trust. And they started trying to do it their own way. But here's the thing, they forgot that the end was already written. They forgot that in the end, we win. No matter what happens right here. No matter what happens in these 80 to 100 years, we win in eternity. He's faithful tomorrow. He's faithful forevermore. You know, and here's the thing. In Numbers chapter 13, verse 1, the Lord said to Moses, "Send some men to explore the land of Canaan, which I'm giving to the Israelites. From each ancestral tribe, send one of its leaders." Listen, these are the same people. God told them, hey, I'm going to give you this land. that's flowing with milk and honey. It's yours. These are the same people that watch God part the Red Sea, that watch God give them doggone manna from heaven, water from a rock, gave them shoes that never wore out. I'm like, God, I can use that miracle right now. I got 4 kids and woof. But like this is that same God that did all of this for them. The same God that's given them plenty of miracles. And now they're to the very promised land where God said he was going to give it to them. And they begin to doubt. And you have to ask yourself, like, how dumb can they be? This makes me feel real good about myself when I see this in their decision. But then I pause, and I'm like, Dimitri, bro, that's a reflection of you sometimes. It's a reflection of us sometimes. We've seen God be faithful. We've seen God do things in our lives. But still yet we don't trust him. I love what Revelation 21 says. It says, and I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, look, God's dwelling place is now among the people. He will dwell with them. They will be his people. And God himself will be with them and be their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain. For the old order of things is gone. It's passed away. He who was seated on the throne said, I'm making what? Everything new. Then he said, write this down, for these words are what? Trustworthy and true. Everything God has said is trustworthy and true. If God has prompted you to do something in your heart, in your spirit, like do it. Do it. Some people, I've heard it in Christian circles. Well, God ain't speaking to people like that. It's only in his word. Come on. Yeah, this is God's living word. But God's spirit do prompt us to do things. What has God's spirit prompted you to do? You haven't done it because of fear or maybe lack of trust. God told you he was going to heal you. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know what it is that you felt like God has just put in you and you know it's from him. You haven't done it. Maybe you say, well, what about the things I'm worried about? And what if it happens? What about the things I'm worried about? And what if it happens? This is what I know. There's this family. They couldn't be here today, but can you put this picture up of the Ellis family? And the Ellis family, they started coming here on the first day we launched. And I asked them, can I share their story? And in this picture, you see Duke, that's their baby. And they had been trying to have a child. They felt like, hey, it's time for us let's try to have a baby, another baby. And so they started trying. They got excited. And then they got pregnant. And they got on into the pregnancy. And then some things happened and the baby died. She had a miscarriage. And they're like, God, how can this happen? Like, we trust you. We're faithful. We're serving you. And you allow my child to die. And that hurt them. So some time went by, a whole year. It's like, let's just try again. And they tried again. They got excited. Let's do this thing. And they lost the baby again. they begin to doubt God's faithfulness. Because God, how can you let us get us so excited? And we trust that you are a healer. And I've tried to have a child 2 times. And both of them have died in my womb. And they were crushed. They were crushed. Like, how is this going to happen? God, I don't know if you're faithful because I can't trust you. And you know, when we moved here, I started helping out. Renard, he's a coach at one of the local high schools here with football and weightlifting. Then his wife Christina, she like trains and like helps. She runs like a beauty pageant, like USA beauty pageant thingy, and it's just breaking her heart. And he and I began to build a relationship together and just talking about God because they got out of church. And this was a year before we were launching the church here because we moved here early. And we started building a relationship. Like, man, you know what? God is good, bro. Like, he's like, yeah, you're right. And they decided to try again. And they were worried, like, man, I don't know what we're going to do. And then on the day we launched, the first day we launched the church, they came on day 1 of Bridge Church, the first Sunday ever. And they went home, and she's like, I don't feel good. I need to try something. I need to take some medicine or whatnot. And she's like, it kind of feel like pregnancy. So they went, and she found out she was pregnant again. And now they're at a point of like, God, you gonna do this to us again? Like, you're taking us through these emotions again. And you know what? We got with them, and I was just like, hey, I don't have the answers. I can't say you're going to have the child, or you're not. I can't say, I don't know. But what I can do is, I can just encourage you. Like, don't lose faith. Don't lose hope. Keep trusting God. If this is something you feel like, you know what you guys are doing, like, hey, I'm going to pray with you, and let's just trust God. Because I don't have the answers. I can't comfort you in saying, yeah, this is going to be all right, because I don't know. But what I do know, and you might not want to hear this in this moment, but it's scripture, and God says that all things work out for the good of those that love God. And maybe in this situation, you not having this child, maybe God's going to use that hurt for you to help walk somebody else through it that's lost children and hadn't been able to have kids. Or maybe God will give you a miracle baby and you can help somebody else that's doubting it. But I don't know, but I know God is faithful. And I know even the worst moments in our lives works out for the good. And you may not want to hear that right now because you're in the middle of it, but it's so true. And so we begin to pray. We begin to walk through life. And 9 months later, of them trusting God, come what may, death or life, the way they want it or the way they didn't expect it, they're going to trust God. And they began to pray. And they came to a point where it's like, God, you know what? If this does happen again, we still love you and we still trust you. And 9 months later, they had a beautiful baby. His name, Dean. And he's 1 year old. He's like 1.5 right now. But hearing that, and that story, it reminds me of Isaiah chapter 46, verse 4. I am he who will sustain you. I have made you and I will carry you. I will sustain you and I will rescue you. In John chapter 14, verse 1. And you can stand with me this morning. We're going to close out. John chapter 14, verse 1. I love the scripture. It says this: don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God and also trust in me. This is Jesus. So I don't know where you are on this scale of trust. I don't know where your trust is. I don't know if it's waning. I don't know if it's in full effect. I don't know. But what I do want you to know, that God is faithful and was faithful before. He'll be faithful today, and he'll be faithful in tomorrow. We just got to trust him.